Mhm. Share. All right. All right. Hello, everybody. Um, before I start, I just want to thank everybody for coming to listen to me talk for an undetermined amount of time. I guess before I get into the meat of everything, just give like a brief overview about who I am, my background, and my practice and where I'm from. Um, so I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Um, my practice is concerned very heavily with primarily two things: the preservation of stories of individuals and groups within the Black community, and the dynamics of our society and its social architecture that acts against the stories of those individuals. I make work about uh, things like music, hip hop, jazz, that kind of thing, and but also about prison and prison culture and surveillance. Because things like prison, environments like that, and how they affect urban centers in the United States are like pressure cookers that kind of create a lot of Black culture and African American culture historically in the United States. And a lot of genres like hip hop, most notably, exist as a mechanism to cope with and lament the circumstances of things like incarceration and the conditions in urban centers. Um, but in DC, DC is a very, just to talk about where I'm from, is a very important part of my identity as an artist. I reference a lot of local culture, local traditions, local music. Uh, Washington, D.C. has a very strong, influential music scene. A lot of particular is very active in the early drill movement. It's also been like the birthplace of a lot of like very influential fashion trends. Like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with like New Balance sneakers and like Air Forces and Under Armour, and but all of those things were like mainstays in the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., decades before they were popular anywhere else. Um, and something that I think about a lot, and just to give you guys some history and background about Washington, D.C. Um, DC has also a history of being a mecca and a center point in like Black culture. At one point, it was 75%, like 70 or 75% Black population in the District of Columbia, one of the highest in the country, and especially for it to be the capital of the country. And due to a combination of like the rise in urbanization and the civil unrest in the city in the 60s that came about after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and the rise of suburbs outside of the city, a lot of white people left, and that's when Black people migrated into the city in mass. Um, and ushered in a time with a lot of potent Black cultural production and was a center of Black culture with places like Howard University, a historically Black college that albeit kind of a bit of a shell of its former self, was like a center and a meeting point of a lot of some of the greatest thinkers that the Black community has produced, period. And then in the late 80s and the early 90s, uh, the entire country, but primarily like Washington, D.C., heavier than many places, was heavily impacted by the crack cocaine epidemic, which ripped through Black communities in the United States of America. DC DC during that time period had the highest murder rate of any city in the United States. And things like that decimating the communities, driving down like the driving down like the fabric of communities, driving down the property, uh, allowed for allowed for a lot of the community to be driven out. And right after the peak of the crack cocaine epidemic, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development essentially invented gentrification with an initiative called Hope 6, which was meant to revitalize and integrate urban communities, but essentially gave housing authorities free rein to push out unwanted individuals with the promise that they would be allowed to come back, a promise that unfortunately was never fulfilled. So DC is essentially the birthplace of gentrification. Um, and something that is also very, I think, very formative of my identity as an artist and my perspective on the world is um, how DC, I say a lot to a lot of people because going around, people ask me a lot about like, oh, what's it like in DC? DC feels almost like two different cities, and I'm gonna get into why. DC is what I like to call an opportunity city. It has a very large tech industry. There's a military industry. There, people come there to work for the government. It's a university city. Also, there's over a dozen major universities that are active in the DC metro area. So there's a lot of people that come to extract resources for themselves for a short period of time and then leave, and then drive up the rent and cost of living for people like me and my family and the ambient Black population that has been there for a very long time. Um, you know, is the reason why there's somehow all simultaneously a rise in crime, but also a rise in rent at the same time. But people can't afford shit, so that's why there's crime. But and people also I show, but funny enough, I primarily show abroad, and I've shown in Berlin more than anywhere else. People always ask me why, and I'm like, I think the joke I like to make is that, maybe I get along with Berlin so much is because it was literally two cities for a long time. And just like Washington, it's like trying to reconcile the differences between two very different identities that are existing simultaneously. Um, but before I get into the rest of the lecture, I brought some music clips that I'm going to share with you guys. These are like two of my favorite tracks. I'm going to play a little bit of each one of them. Let me see. So this clip is from a performance by soul singer BB King at a prison in upstate New York. He came and performed for the prisoners. Uh, So that is one of the most famous performances by B.B. King, one of the most famous and important blues singers from the United States. Again, just like I said, but the other genres, blues existed and was created as a method to lament the conditions in primarily the American South. Um, so the next track I'm going to play is quite contemporary. The song actually came out like 3 weeks ago, and I love this song. It's from a rapper from DC. So I don't think there's a whole lot for me to really say about it, other than I think it's actually one of the most oddly cinematic things I've seen for something that's just a bunch of guys in a house, but with a camera. But I think that, it's a testament to kind of just um, how much you can do with like so little. It's just kind of there's a brazenness to this video that I just appreciate and that I try to incorporate into my work in terms of like a diffusion of energy, because rap music is my favorite genre. So I'm not going to say too much more about it. I'm just going to play it, and but this video and the one I'm about to play is just gonna set the vibe for you guys. Let me see. All right. Hold on a sec. It's not that I changed my sound, that I switched up my sound or not. It's just like I'm just maturing, but I get back on this. I'm still this person right here. I still turn me up a little bit in the headphones. I'm about to tell them dog shit on this track. I'm DR great. Tell them I ain't in this rap shit. I ain't telling no fibs, but now we can get on this bit speaking out life. But this shit still props though. Look, shooting at niggas and dropping these mixtapes. Switch up the sound for the hoes and they dictate. Throwing the salt on my name, how my dictate. Breaking her back from the south with a thick plate. I'm breaking her back from the south in this fat. I'm moving the south with a 9 with a black. Fuck out the summer and give me a lag. Hey, summertime coming around with a brat. Moving and shooting and robbing and robbing. No talking about skin, no, we bad and we robbing. No fuck is Lil Nino, we know I'm a problem. Try to get him a feature with me and I charge him. Free tall wall, he mad on my bet. He hating, she fucking with me cause I'm red. I'll fuck up the lonely enough, be giving them swag. I'm bending and rapping, I jumped in my bag. I'm rapping and bending, still cooling these missions. I'm rapping about freakers on 3-eye drag. I'm rapping about freakers and busting my gun. I'm looking for Blick, I'ma shoot up the one. I'm looking for 50, we shot up the K. I'll fuck up the K while Lil Bro no run. A 20 if you want, a 20 if you want. I'll get your ass slapped with the bro with his gun. We're shooting at Tongue cause he shouldn't even swung. Tell Tongue cause his father I'ma piss on his son. He reached for the chain and wasn't successful. When Skin on start shooting, I knew he was special. He wanted to talk, he put me on Twitch. I'm putting his neck on your ass when I catch you. Moving and shooting and robbing and robbing. No talking about Skin, no, we bad and we robbing. No fuck is Lil Nino, we know I'm a problem. Try to get him a feature with me and I charge him. And free tall wall, he mad on my bet. He hating, she fucking with me cause I'm rich. I'll fuck up his brother a bit. Like lonely enough, be giving him swag. I'm bending and rapping, I jumped in my bag. I'm rapping and bending, still going in these missions. I'm rapping about freakers on 3-eye drag. I'm rapping about freakers and busting my gun. I'm looking for Blick, I'ma shoot up the one. I'm looking for 50, we shot up the K. I'll fuck up the K while Lil Bro no run. All right. So yeah, those are like two of my favorite pieces of music, two of my favorite performances, two of my favorite recordings. And then now I'm going to like actually talk about what the lecture is about. So so yeah, I made this. This is based on, this is to represent a theory that I've been developing that I simply like to refer to as subject versus environment, which deals with the relationship the individual has with their surroundings, how they're shaped, influenced, and perceived based on the circumstances on their surroundings, and how, as an individual, they react to those surroundings. And being a Black person from one of the many underserved urban centers of America, I've witnessed firsthand the battle between a person and the world around them and the various methods, pathways, and coping mechanisms adopted to deal with that battle. One of those being a projection of hyper masculinity and projection of like intimidation, which is why I showed you that last video. The people acting in that kind of way and producing that kind of image is a survival mechanism to survive urban environments in America that force you to be a lot tougher than you hopefully should have to be anywhere else. Um, so so just a breakdown of like this chart. So essentially like a person at the top, environment, people's environment is at direct odds with like their mobility, by which I mean like both physically and kind of conceptually. Mobility, social mobility, the ability to kind of move outside of your like financial class, but also physical mobility, because of a phenomenon in the United States known as food deserts, where people are not like within like reasonable distance of healthy and nutritional food supplies, being having to rely on food that can be obtained from like fast food and convenience stores, not having access to things like proper groceries. Um, and then on the horizontal, you have society and like the constructs of society and kind of the unspoken like social contracts that exist as the fabric of our society, and essentially like the rules of uh of the world being direct odds with people's behavior that exists as a response to the conditions and circumstances of your environment. Um, so here I brought this chart, just kind of these two graphs to these two maps, these health data maps to kind of nail the point home about like just some of the circumstances that like produced me and like many other people. This is a health data chart about this one particularly is like hospital visit rates due to like adult asthma. And then when I look, and these all of the counties inside of like this triangle, which lies at the intersection between the two largest airports in the region and the military base. And so there's and as well as multiple highway junctions and hospitals that, through their helicopters create additional air traffic. And inside of that triangle are the lowest income, least well served and highest crime rate areas, one of which is the one that I'm from. And then also at the same time, inside of that area is also the highest rates of adult asthma, the highest rates of hospital visits due to heart failure. So this is like a direct physical representation of like some of the themes that I was just talking about that influence my work. So let me see. So, all right. So what I'm about to show you, this is from a presentation that Momo mentioned at Kunstakademie that I presented in Berlin last September, which is a visualization of like another form of this theory. This installation deals with subjects of like boundaries and like social systems and social architecture, as well as like surveillance and the relationship between like a viewer and the subject and the violence of being seen non-consensually. So what we have here is a curtain that with a life-size representation of a security fence, where you are then once you in order to view the installation, you have to essentially like transgress this kind of idea of a boundary. And then you're caught on a surveillance camera, um, like brought this clip. Um, so this is actually the gallery owner. I don't think he knows I have this video. So so essentially your face is then taken and added to this display, where on the right, or on the left was faces that I had gathered and processed from a number of shoplifter displays in the United States. In the United States, I don't know how common it is here, but in the States, there's like this phenomenon where at places like gas stations and grocery stores and particularly places mainly in like lower income areas, where when someone is like caught stealing, a picture of them is taken and from from the surveillance and put on a public display in order to essentially publicly shame them. And some of these displays remain up for years. Most of these images that I gathered were from the same display that I've been visiting over the course of 5 years, and much of it was the same, and then some of the timestamps on those pictures. Some of those pictures have been there for like 10 years. So imagine getting caught stealing a candy bar and then you're publicly shamed for like a decade. Um, so so I then was like gathering these images and then so then on the right they're then juxtaposed against visitors to the gallery. Um, and part of my idea around this installation was kind of taking these two kind of different places in class, because like attending exhibitions, going to galleries, things like that is seen as like a kind of um like a bourgeois, like educated thing to do, and then juxtaposing that against people that are trying to be pushed as like negligible members of society. But then taking these two parties and then placing them on the same plane, a lot of it came from like my own reconciliation with the fact that I was one of those people. I was unfortunately, wasn't always, in the most stable place in my life. So, like I might exist on one or two of these shop displays somewhere, and then now and I'm like a participant in this, in an art ecosystem, but also at the same time, like kind of trying to remember and pull into conversation like who I was before that. So and then, but again, a big part of this was like thinking about like what do we project onto certain presentations of people? How do we frame people? What are those framing devices like? And one of the so this was kind of like a social experiment in order to kind of see how people would react to this kind of thing. And I actually kind of think that like because it was meant to invoke somewhat of a like nah, like not scary is too strong of a word, but it was supposed to be like uneasy. The fact that you kind of pay the price of like your public viewing with this, and but it actually ended up having the opposite effect um where like it ended up becoming almost like this vanity thing where like there were visitors coming back to the gallery every week to see if they had made it onto the wall. um so the social experiment kind of, my at least my intentions like kind of failed a little bit, but then I realized, again, it kind of reminded me about the power of framing devices, because you can't shame someone by putting their face in a place that they want to be. And again, that kind of goes into like the dynamic and the perception and the prestige of like the art gallery and the white wall. Um, so and then this is the quick hold on a second. This is like a quick little a reel blending together like the faces that I collected into a little video piece. But so and then this here is the chart where that this body of work was like inspired by that I made. Again, where like individual boundaries are at odds with like the external expectations that are placed on individuals as members of a society. We all come from somewhere and we all have expectations of us and how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to act, and then to deviate from that is what is creates, social friction. And then what people like to project onto others is directly at odds with what people's individual realities are. So, and then from there, because now I will kind of get into the presentation that I gave at FLK, um, because this installation was originally supposed to be part of the previous one. So here, like in response to uh, the conditions of the previous project and how people responded to it, and people's kind of indulgences and in vanity in the way they engaged with the work. Here again, there is the camera that I have set up, and then here's a kind of a mock shop stand with that contains the exhibition text for the show. So in order to understand the show, you are then captured on the camera, but there is no way to view it. You don't know what I'm doing with it. You don't know if or when I'm watching it. I could be watching it where you're looking at it. I was watching it the other day. I actually brought some clips. Uh, so again, it's like this is meant to like there's a couple of clips where like I watch people pick up the booklet, read it, they're like, oh shit, I'm being watched. They look at the kid and then they like turn away and like leave. Um, but again, like to get into like the idea of like kind of the the violence of like being seen non-consensually. Um, I think kind of, giving of yourself in a public way, kind of comes at a cost. And what I was getting into this exhibition was like this idea of that, you know, like anytime someone like engages with like the work of an artist, they're kind of taking a piece of them for better and sometimes for worse. Um, with this shop stand, I had taken pictures of Arizona tea and Skittles candy and made the covers for the booklet. And the significance of that is because those are what were found on Trayvon Martin's person at the time of his death. Um, and then he had just left a convenience store buying these, the kind of place where people are documented in this kind of way. And then, he was then profiled and then murdered. And then kind of putting like the viewer in kind of, I mean, I can never put a viewer in that kind of position, but then like kind of trying to create almost some kind of sense of empathy or for the position by then like putting the viewer in like conceptually some kind of reference to that situation where then by choosing to carry those same objects as him, you meet some of that same kind of uneasy gaze. And and then in the back wall of the installation is this individual, and this is a collage of images that I combined together from original photographs that I had taken. Like this one is one of the on the right is one of the original, like uh on the left is one of the shoplifter displays that I've utilized in my work. But then this is like a collage of images that I'd taken from like gas stations between here and in Chicago, and collage them together because there's this phenomenon in the Black community about kind of using gas stations as like a meeting place. It's one of the few like well-lit, open air kind of free places that you can congregate at night. And then people like meet there with like, people have like car meets there. It's quite an interesting thing. But the figure in the center of this frame is a character from the movie Paid in Full. Um, he's wearing this kind of like stereotypical like black hooded outfit, the kind of stereotypical idea of what comes to mind when you think of like some kind of thug or street thug or street person or something. But then, in the film, he was this idealized version of that. He was a gangster, he was a drug dealer, he wore this outfit on the way to commit a murder. But also at the same time, he was like this complex, nuanced person that had his own kind of code of honor, but but then also taking this representation, this kind of stereotype, and juxtaposing it against kind of references to Trayvon is because this is the kind of individual that they projected on him to be in the media after his death to justify his death. And then I'm also like kind of fascinated with his image because it's like I look like this a lot of the time. I came here today dressed exactly like this. Not even conceptually, like this is just how I look, and well, I'm on a roll. So but yeah, so I saved these like two clips um from from the thing, you know. And it picks it up, reads it, and walks away. And, uh, so oh, a second. All right. So but then all right, so the next thing I want to show you guys, are we looking on time? Okay. So next thing I want to show you guys is this project that I presented recently in Milan at the Drop City Center for Architecture and Design it opened during Milan Design Week, and closed like the 31st of May, I think. Um, Bad at numbers. So all of the artist installations in this exhibition were done in these same size kind of boxes, which are kind of they're designed to be the size of like an average prison cell. Um, so let me see, where's my mouse at? All right. Um, so the exhibition was called on like a number of international artists to kind of present works dealing with the conditions of incarceration in their respective countries. There were a lot of artists from Italy, but there were artists from the UK, there was artists from Germany, and I was kind of like representing the American delegation. Um, so this installation, a lot of it, like a lot of the kind of because I also produced an essay for this. But actually, I'm gonna go over kind of what it looks like first. But so we have the installation, and then it might be hard to tell, but there's around the sides, it's like lined with my poems, because I'm also a poet and a performance artist, and then I also this is me performing inside of it. Um, and then this is like the inside of it, where it's this like life-size like photo collage of like kind of various images that deal with incarceration. One second. Where these are there, it includes like images of mugshots, images that were produced inside of prisons, images of things related to prison, media about prison. But in the center of this is two images of doors, two different kind of institutional doors that I placed on top of each other. One of them is a prison cell security door, and then the other is a security door from my high school. And because in the essay, I talk about and then also this image in the center is the back of a uniform from the local jail from where I grew up. So, but the installation was very concerned with like what's called the school to prison pipeline, where the kind of conditions, the less than desirable, less than favorable conditions of how public schools in America are set up, kind of create a direct pipeline that feed like children from underserved communities directly into the prison industrial complex, because prison in America is a privatized industry that exists for profit. Um, like in my high school was the joke was always that my school looked like a jail. And they're like, oh, you go to the jail. Yeah. So then I actually so then I'll show you. So then I actually took four images and juxtaposed them together and did this poll. And where I asked people to guess where one of these is my school, and the other three are youth detention centers um, from various places in America. And I asked people to guess which one is my school. By a show of hands, who thinks my school is number one? Who thinks it's number 2? Who thinks it's number 3? Who thinks it's number 4? Y'all all wrong as hell because it's number 1. Yeah, so I gathered responses from about 500 people, and only about 16% of people guessed correctly, which would suggest that my school looks the most like a jail. And then when I looked I looked into it, I looked into the architecture firm that was responsible for designing and building not only my high school, but a lot of the kind of public buildings in my county, K. Dixon Architecture. And then I kind of did my own inquiry and found that like the founder, Catherine Dixon, has a specific background related to correctional and justice-based architecture. So she actually designs jails. And then image number 4 is the Youth Detention Center in Baltimore City, which is Baltimore, for you guys that don't know where it is. Don't blame you for not being super familiar with American geography. It's the next major city up from Baltimore. It's about 45 minutes. It's like relative distance between Dusseldorf and Köln. But yeah, she oversaw the reconstruction of the Youth Detention Center in Baltimore. So just really doubling down on the whole, like, damn, jail people built my school. But to go back to like the exhibition, so inside of this, there was like a video sculpture in the back on a phone. I'm really into like phones in prison because I use a lot of material that references and directly pulls from like self-documentation done by inmates on smuggled cell phones within prison. Like this clip was recorded. This is a music video that one of my favorite rappers recorded on a smuggled phone, like in jail. And I used one of these clips in the video sculpture.
Police said I had a warrant for hijack vehicle. My heart get caught squat like beetle. 556 hit his ass. I'm still fighting, open case. Police said I.
And then I juxtaposed that against this Instagram live that he made as soon as he was released. And I find this video to be like quite potent because it's like the joy on his face after getting out, like honestly, like made me cry the first time I watched it.
Getting that. Let's see what they be talking about, man. Just chill, man. Who the hell? Hold on. Who the hell just said I wasn't finna get out though? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What the hell? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Y'all niggas talking about a nigga ain't getting out. A nigga talking about did that in the third, right? They talking about a nigga ain't getting out. They talking about a nigga caught an extra 5 years. They talking about baby woe broke. Talking about baby woe locked up. Baby woe ain't talking about nothing. Man, I'm not studying none of that shit, man. Hey, man, BS shit, man, for real. And them boys outside on game, yeah. And I'm at Rice Street, yeah, and y'all fat for real, the real one. Stop playing with me.
So, and then I also use this clip of Momolu S.K. Stewart. This clip is from the 90s. He's since been released. But he was part of this very famous documentary, which part of it was shot inside of the DC jail. It's called Thug Life in DC. He has since his release been active as like a kind of a voice for like prison abolition, prison reform. He speaks to young men in prison, but there's like many clips of him like rapping from behind bars, a cappella. I'll play one for you now. I used it in the.
Is gonna get down, nigga, cause I'm a motherfucking soldier. My pit bull will never stop. We're trying to rock, fuck cops, them son of a bitches, trying to take me off my damn block. But that's alright, cause I'm gonna be right tight, and every
So music again, very, very important to my practice. There was parts in the essay, works in the installation, kind of talking about how music as this tool for defending, as a weapon to defend your humanity against inhumane conditions. And hold on, I'm gonna have a picture. So for instance, like one of the examples on well, you can let me see if I can zoom in. So these are these toothbrushes. So in prison, there is a makeshift weapon called a shiv, where it can be made in a number of ways, but probably the most famous way is taking a toothbrush and grinding it down into an edge to a sharp point. And I took toothbrushes and I like melted these like radio antennas onto them instead of blades, because some people will also graft sharp edges onto them. But this idea is that like, the antenna being a symbol for communication and a reference to not only like, it's a reference to the, what are called signal jammers that they use in prisons in order to crack down on contraband cell phone use. And they're like these objects that are like covered in radio antennas, and they like flood the airwaves with like ultra dense radio frequencies of the same frequencies cell phones operate on in order to jam them. But I also found it interesting how like the same frequencies that are used to like block communication are the same ones that are used to facilitate it. So then by grafting like these toothbrushes onto antennas instead of blades, it's like again like this idea of like weapon, like music as a form of communication to defend your humanity. But the exhibition alongside with the installations, the art installations, were paired with every room had a different category of like prison objects. And so it doubled as almost this kind of design exhibition that kind of was supposed to emphasize like the industry that exists around profiting from the incarceration of individuals. This was the room that my installation was in, where it has different fixtures related to like it has tables and beds. That's what's in this room. And then in the next room, these are different like bath fixtures. These are different. These are just like different images like from the installation. But this takes me to the next project that I want to show you guys and talk about. So this is an image from the performance that I just did in London. It was a 3-day long durational performance where we turned the gallery into this kind of simulation of a jail cell, and I lived in and did not step foot outside of the gallery for 72 hours, and kind of occupied it in this representation of how a prisoner would. And definitely got some responses to this one. So this was in collaboration with my best friend, Emmanuel Massione. His idea for the performance came from, it's a reference to the Joseph Beuys performance, or Joseph Beuys, I don't know, where he locked himself in a room with a coyote for 72 hours. But my friend, who is my best friend, who's also a young Black man from DC, just like me, he was talking about like, what's my coyote? What am I the most afraid of? And for him and us both, it was prison. So that's where the idea of this performance came from. And the idea was kind of to almost demonstrate some of it's less than humane conditions that people incarcerated are forced to submit themselves to. The gallery did not have a bathroom. So as you could see, so this is the installation post. So after the performance, we left the residue of the performance as the installation, because I didn't have a bathroom. So then it was like, you can imagine we're in those bottles. But no, in some prisons in the United States, they're like so overcrowded and so underserviced that not everybody has access to like something as simple as a bathroom. And then people were able to view me perpetually for those 72 hours. They were able to watch me while I slept, while I did anything, and kind of really emphasizes the idea that like in hyper surveilled environments, um, where it's you versus the environment, every single movement, every action, every step, everything you do then becomes political. Like everything is like calculated. There were many moments during the performance where I just sat there still and silent because I knew whatever I did could be seen. I thought twice about everything that I did. Even something as simple as using the bathroom had to be approached with strategy. Um, so these are some views of the performance from outside. Some of the documentation. While I was inside, I was creating artworks from materials that I had access to. One of which was I took a bunch of prison toothbrushes, ground them down, and collected the shavings into and made a makeshift hourglass. Kind of, the idea is like kind of like the violence of time, and I had written while I was in there. I did a lot of writing. Um, so I took some of the writing and put it on the walls as part of the installation. Um, Somebody that had some rather mean criticism of the project before it opened. I spent 3 days writing a diss track about them and then put the lyrics on the wall. Uh, so let me see. So and then this bucket. So yeah, like again, like the act of even using the bathroom is in an environment like that is like incredibly like almost political. Where like so yeah, again, no toilet, shat in this bucket and then covered it with concrete because and made it a sculpture in the show. This work is titled hold on, did I bring a picture of the whole thing? But this is also surrounding this piece is a number of like instant soup cups, instant noodle cups that I've been eating from, that I had filled with concrete after I ate from them. Um, and the title of the piece is called Stomachache because the again the conditions in private prisons in America are like so poor that like the food that is provided to people is so poor that they rely on I don't know how familiar you guys are with the concept of commissary. The commissary is essentially like a store that you can buy things from in prison in America with money that you earn during your forced labor in prison, but they pay you so little that outside people like have to put money on your books in order for you to be able to buy anything. And people rely on what they get from that commissary things, which but is primarily like non-perishable, low grade, low quality, high sodium like snack foods. So so I lived off of that for those 3 days. As you can imagine, you know, by calling the piece stomach ache, you can imagine how I felt after 3 days. But again, it's like just a this was the project was meant to like kind of bring into conversation some of the conditions that many members of like the Black community especially are subjected to from behind bars. And also just as like an act of solidarity because prisons in America, federal level government prisons in America, there's fewer of them, so they're farther from many urban centers and serve regions. The state that I am from, if you get incarcerated and sent to a federal prison, you get sent to the federal prison that's 2 states away. So it's like about 2 or 3 hours away. And so for many people, especially lower income backgrounds, being able to travel to visit your loved ones in those prisons becomes quite difficult. So this situation becomes where like many people feel forgotten about. So like the idea is that like, we're going to bring these kind of conditions to the street and, that like we haven't forgotten about these people. They're not forgotten about and they won't be forgotten about. Um, and then we also had a CCTV set up inside the gallery that was documenting me during the duration of the performance, along with like a small smuggled cell phone that I used to like document myself. So it's this juxtaposition between consensual and non-consensual documentation, how I chose to document myself versus how I didn't choose, you know. So this is still from the video. We have about 15 hours of video. So, and then this is hold on a second. This is a mosaic of some of the images that I was able to gather, like on the phone, while I was in there. You know, I was, and one of probably the most difficult aspects of this performance was that when I was inside, I could hear just about anything and everything that people were saying outside on the street. But due to the noise on the street, people couldn't hear anything I was saying from behind the glass. So I could hear everything, but I couldn't speak. Communication was one-sided and quite difficult, but there were some instances where I was like communicating with people with like written letters through the glass. And this is someone who came up and wrote a letter to me and showed it to me. Had quite a nice exchange with him. And then also these are like there's also images of me working with the concrete, me creating the works while inside, and just like self-documentation. It's another still. And now I'm going to show you guys another video. I'm going to show you one of the references that I have for this project. It was a full-length music video shot from behind bars by a Philadelphia rapper. I'm going to show it to you guys. A second.
Mama.
Switchy gang, nigga. Switchy gang, nigga. Switchy gang, nigga. All that switches that shit, nigga. They know what's up with the teeth, nigga.
I went to sleep and woke up, the city said I died. They said they turned me to some boat, like fuck I look like live. They said they got back for they man, like why the fuck they lie? They got the drop on the wrong nigga, like who the fuck they fry? They out here cooking innocence, they need to pray to God. If they keep hiding in the back, we blitzing every side. Them niggas thought they was our friends, them niggas thought wrong. Like young boy, get that shit up or you ain't going home. And pussy niggas shut up before you feel my chrome. A nigga got his shit cracked cause he was trying to be grown. Like bro, I think this shit tap, bro, I don't like these phones. She think I'm with a bitch, whole time I'm bending, bitches leave me alone. Once you see him fall, run up to him and just stand over. And I don't know what the fuck a get back is, cause we like getting over. And every time I been they block, bro, I was always sober. This next op I run into, I fuck around, run him over. I'm just thinking lawyer cheese, nigga, I need all my money. So if you owe me, nigga, pay me, don't you be no dummy. He was trolling, then his brother died, and he don't think shit funny. We hop out Twitch shit with that yacht, like ain't no point of running. We had got a drop on a nigga, and he was no more good. They put a warrant out for murders, I'm still in the hood. They thought that we was locked in, but they misunderstood. If only I still had my twin, this shit'll all be good. If you gon' tell when you get booked, then don't be in this shit. They tryna lock me for them bees, whole time I'm innocent. And if you ever go on a hit, don't leave no witnesses. And they keep telling me to rap, but I've been blicking shit. Hey twin, I don't know why these niggas capping like they done put in work. They ain't do nothing about the no chills we put in the dirt. Like please don't try link with us, you might get dead the worst. A couple niggas diss my twin, yeah, that's cause they feelin' shit. They actually start that torture shit, just know I did that first. Before I ever made a song, just know.
All right, I think you guys get the point. All right, so love that video. So I'm gonna show you guys. I'm out of like, I've showed you guys all the like presentations, like fully opened exhibitions that I've brought to show. So I'm gonna get a little bit into some things that I'm working on. Some of which from the show that I have opening this weekend in Berlin. So that project is centered around the primary center of that is I'm using the popular video game Grand Theft Auto, particularly San Andreas, because that video game it takes place in the main character that follows. It takes place in one of the most tumultuous, kind of troubled periods in African American history, like I was talking about earlier, the crack epidemic. But the game takes place in South Central Los Angeles, and follows like a gang member navigating that time period in a dramatized way, obviously. But again, this game takes place in this very like troubled, highly political period of African American history. And in the installation, I'm presenting these two stations where I have two instances of the game set up for people to play. But on one, all of the controls and buttons have been removed except for the combat button. So you will only be able to directly aggress whatever is around you. But on the right, all controls are left intact except for the combat button. And you're able to navigate. You have technical free agency, but you are now stripped of all means to defend yourself. So what I'm getting into with this is this like juxtaposition against like between like it's about like lateral movement, the ability to like move socially between different classes or lack thereof, and how where essentially like people in these kinds of environments are like lacking their movement, they're essentially pitted against each other, and the sacrifices that people make in order to escape those environments, people giving up, like essentially declawing themselves for access to things like a middle class, or people in the United States taking on hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal debt in order to study and have an education in order to escape those circumstances. So that's the next installation that I'm preparing. And then I'm going to show you guys, I brought a trailer. I brought the trailer for my film that I'm working on that's being premiered in Antwerp next month. So actually, the trailer hasn't been seen publicly yet, so it's coming out tomorrow, but you guys are gonna be the first ones to see it. So this film is a little bit of I'm gonna pull up a still from it. This film is a bit of a different direction than a lot of what my work is. I've been teaching myself like Blender and like 3D animation, but it's much more kind of surreal, much more sci-fi, but it's also still kind of grounded in some of the same like urban aesthetics that my work is most known for. But the film, I'm actually going to show you. I'll show you guys the reference that inspired the film first. It's a clip from Neon Genesis Evangelion, where the main character is visiting his mother's grave. We'll play this clip for you.
How long has it been since we last came here together? 3 years?
Yeah. Then the last time for me was when I ran away. It still doesn't seem real to me that Mom is buried here. I can't picture her face anymore.
People let their memories fade in order to move on. Although, there are some things we must never forget. Your mother taught me how to be grateful for these memories, and I come here to remind myself how much they matter.
Do you have a picture of her?
They were all destroyed. Even this grave is empty. Nothing remains.
So you got rid of everything. My teacher said you would.
Everything I need is in my heart and mind. That will have to do for now.
All right. So I remember watching this, and this particular scene kind of resonated with me because a lot of my work is like it deals with the preservation of culture and history, and stories. And in the scene they're talking like he says, you know, like there are no surviving images of your mother. Everything we need is in our heart, you know. And even then there's no bodies in any of those graves because it's from a mass disaster. So I was thinking, so I think a lot about the burden and the responsibility of preserving and maintaining and carrying history with you and forward, and how to go about doing that, who is responsible for that, how do we go about doing that. So like you'll see like the visual inspiration, but I took a lot of like visual reference from like these rods that mark the graves. I'm gonna show you guys the trailer now. Okay.
Underground flower. Underground flower. Underground flower, what's the rumor? I like the sound of the ambulance. I like to know that it's there. Underground flower, that turbulence. I like to know that it's there. Don't forget to clap when the plane lands.
Don't judge me, be there for me. Don't judge me, just hold me in your arms. Don't judge me, take care of me. Hold me in your arms. Don't judge me, be there for me.
It was far more difficult this time. And you knew it.
Oh, right. So that's the little thing I made. So like just to kind of get into like some of the aesthetics and motifs, as you noticed, I'm quite fond of crows. But crows are like, you know, as much as they are a symbol of like, they're associated with like kind of negative omens, but they're also they're a symbol of change and transition and like rebirth. Because the film also it's 3 chapters, and it's about like the cycle of like kind of life and death and rebirth. And the still that this scene is from is meant to kind of be this visualization of like purgatory, this like in between place. Um, and this is all like 3D scans that I did with my phone, me and my other best friend Andy. Those are all 3D scans of me, by the way. That's all me. So but yeah, like again, like kind of using the aesthetics of like my own. This is from my neighborhood that I grew up in, combined with like a collage of like other things. Um, but then like being surrounded by these representations of like the grave markers from that movie scene, the idea is that like we're kind of surrounded by and one with our history at all times. And that's the way that I like to live. I mean, since it's still being worked on, like, I'm still figuring out how to talk about it. I'm still figuring out how to talk about all this stuff. So I appreciate you for bearing with me. But that's just about all I have. So, okay. Hell yeah. Mm. So, um, so kind of always knew I wanted to make things. I just didn't know what that thing would be. Like when I was a really little kid, I wanted to be a construction worker, mostly because I like the big machines, but I also like the idea of like building things, and like making things. And then after that, I wanted to make comic books, and then I wanted to make video games, and then I wanted to make clothes, and then eventually I landed on conceptual art. But my mother was also like very supportive of me making art from a very young age. I owe a lot of this to her. She didn't get the chance to pursue art the way that she wanted to. So she was always very enabling of me doing it, and I'm blessed to have like the support of my family. Not always professionally, they didn't want me to be a professional artist, but they were always supportive of me like making things, and I've always felt a lot of things. And so I have a very deep need to like express myself. Um, like I don't, I was actually just talking to a very dear friend of mine about this the other day because because I am a performance artist. I do performances, I do spoken word, and that kind of thing, and now public speaking. But and I actually quite dislike the sound of my own voice. I cannot listen to recordings of myself sometimes. But my need to express myself outweighs the weight of that insecurity. So, but yeah, but professionally, like my CV starts about 4 years ago. Um, and that's what I was showing like locally, but it's just but it's like, it's all about the friends you make along the way. But no, but just through like genuine relationships I made with like-minded people in various places, kind of helped to get me to where I am today, not just, in the fortunate place I am to be in my career at the age of 25, but also just, like where I am in my mind and like, where I am with my work. So I hope that answered your question.
like people from where you grew up, or were you still in contact with these people, and yeah, or more in an artistic way, how is it important to you to make it visible to other areas?
I think it's incredibly important. I very heavily stress the need for documentation. Like there's the amount of times where like I almost like, wanted to fight someone because they didn't document the project properly. Because the open secret in art is that 99% of the people that see the show see it through the phone. So, and so making these things available online for people to see, for the people that they're meant for, is incredibly important. And which is part of why I also work very heavily with media, and things that translate more easily to an online medium. Um, and like because a lot of times with video artists, they don't, and filmmakers, they don't allow their works to be online in full, to protect to kind of protect the museum collections that their work exists in. Like my favorite artist, probably the most influential artist on my practice, Arthur Jafa, like you can't watch his films online. You have to go to a museum to see them, because if they were available online, the museums wouldn't buy them. So, but when I premiered my last film, like when I did an interview with around it, I had them attach the entire film to the article so people could watch it. Like art's for being seen. And so but I do still have like I like to think I still have like a pretty good connection to like the place that I came from. Like some of the biggest supporters of my work, particularly around the things that deal with prison and incarceration, are people from back home that I know that have been to jail. So having the support of those people over what I'm doing means so much more than like, some art dealer or some curator or something from somewhere in Europe. So like I like to I really try to, which is why I also like make so much work about where I'm from and kind of trying to bring that to everywhere I go and share that culture and then show people back home how I'm sharing that and preserving it. So, yeah.
Thanks for your answer. And I have one question. I only want to point out that it's really worth to see the show with that 5K in real, because you can get it in a phone. I was really impressed by the large wall works and call them combined paintings that way. So you really have to see them. What I'm interested in is that you have many exhibitions in Europe.
Mhm.
Can you explain a little how it came that you have so different places in Berlin? And will you ever show at Carpenter again where we went to in Berlin?
So, I have gotten a number of versions of that question of kind of how I kind of crossed over. You know, well, kind of how I'll answer like how, and then I'll answer how I think why. Um, so, so honestly, it was just kind of like one person leads you to another, like one like-minded person leads you to another, like a very close friend of mine spoke highly of me to some people she met in New York. And then I got in touch with those people. And then those people were close to someone that owned a gallery. And then I started showing with that gallery. And then I met one of their other artists whose name is Alan Gardner. Um, love him. But you know, one of my best friends, Sarah, introduced me to a clothing dealer when I was making clothes, Sophia, and then her boyfriend at a gallery, Casey, and then I worked with Casey, and then his artist that he worked with, Alan Gardner. We had an artist run space in the UK. He offered me a show the day I met him, and that was kind of the first time I crossed over. And from there, like that's how I got into contact with like my friend Richie Culver, who got me my first show in Vienna, and then also was part of the process of helping me get the show in Antwerp. And then, so again, it was just kind of one, one like-minded person like leads you to another, but also at the same time, like the work I'm attracted to, the institutions that I'm attracted to, the galleries that I'm attracted to tend to be on this side of the ocean more than they are at home. You know, like I've like meticulously like looked through like the programs of like Kunsthalle in Basel and like the Vienna Secession and um the was Louisiana in Denmark, you know, because like, you know, for instance, like Arthur Jafa, probably like one of the blackest artists in existence. His largest show to date was in Denmark, you know? So like there's more of an attraction to like more transgressive art practices on this side than there is back home. So um, you know, I'll tell this story. So I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the Rubels and the Rubel family and the Rubel Museum and the Rubel collection. They have two museums. They have one in Miami and they have one in DC. Very famous collectors. And you know, DC is also notorious for not being very supportive of the arts. Like it's you have to leave to do things elsewhere to be able to do anything back home. And like me and my best friend, we did the show together in London. We did the performance, and then the Rubels were in town, and then he managed to track them down and bring them to our show. And we sat in there with them having a conversation with them for like 3 hours. And then afterwards, we were just like we were joking about how like we had to like go all the way to London to talk to the people that have the museum in DC. You know, it's like it's kind of fucked up, actually. You know, I wish I didn't have to go all the way across the ocean, do some shit just to maybe hopefully get my work shown in the city that I'm from. You know, so there's just much less of a culture around the support for the arts in America in general. You know, anytime I hear someone in Europe talk about a grant, I'm like, that's funny. I wish we had that. Like grant funding in general is very almost non-existent if you're doing anything kind of outside of traditional confines in most places in America. So like if I wasn't showing over here, I probably wouldn't be showing at all, honestly. Um,
Okay, because especially if there is no like grants or a lot of residencies that your base of living from. I was wondering if you get well, you wasn't busy from selling works. So I was wondering how maybe is it for you if you go like if you have a show coming up in a gallery, for example, also maybe also different from showing at the space like an FAK when there's not this like direct economic pressure. Maybe just how you access such value.
What's your question again? Because
They want to get it like how does the work translate into this gallery context?
Yeah, there's definitely like a different energy I approach a space when I know that like there is no like kind of financial burden or financial outcome. I try to go into every project, you know, almost prepared to lose money because I don't do this I don't do this for money. I don't do this. That's not why I do this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy making a living. Um, but doing a show like at a place like FLK where there's a fee, because people always ask me like you get paid to do these things, right? If they sell something, yeah, because artist fees are very uncommon. Like very rarely are you paid outright just for exhibiting. So every project is like kind of a risk, but also at the same time, it makes me like, you know, double down on like what I'm showing, because it's like, all right, if I'm taking on this risk, I have to really believe in what I'm doing, Um, and mm, uh, but yeah, it's also like a matter of just kind of like balancing opportunities based on like what they can do for you, there's some things that there's some things that like would be great to do, but that I might not be able to take on simply because they don't provide for me in a certain way. And it's kind of like an unfortunate consequence of like being an artist in a world that, like requires like money for existing. But I hope I kind of answered your question.
I was interested in your interest in games or the cameras, the cameras, surveillance.
Mm.
And I was wondering, I mean, as you're saying now, you have to get away before people get interested in you again, right?
Yeah.
So like you in order that they can see you. So distancing, like the camera also distance the object of what is being observed. You know what I mean? There's a kind of a fascination and also like maybe like a fetish or maybe like, something becomes interesting that's not, people just don't touch it, but if you look at it or something like that. I'm just wondering how much you, I mean, like, you love, I could imagine, but that's my projection, I must say. Or maybe I should formulate it as a question, but, the love-hatred relationship of, I mean, when is the gaze of the others, looking at you or your work and sort of, thinking of understanding what you're talking about as, you know what I mean? The content of what you're talking about, you're relating the work towards, is actually you're interested in the aesthetic form of it as well, right? The playing the game and the music and the rhythm. So it's not, if I understand it right, it's not really so much that I know what it is about, what the life is, but somehow I can connect to this gaze, to the work. And I was wondering, what's my question actually? I mean, no, that when this gaze suddenly annoys, is there a moment when it annoys, people looking and projecting things, content into it? You know what I mean? Or for instance, performing the prisoner in this gallery, was there a moment that you got annoyed about your own idea? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, because I think it's performing is such an interesting thing, because it sort of folds also in a way. And it creates a new reality. It doesn't try to represent it, right? So I think that's also a moment when it becomes interesting. So I don't know what my question is about. But I think it's also really good. I mean, I'm curious when this gaze from others do annoy you.
There were definitely a number of moments during that performance where I was like, what did I get myself into? Like, why am I doing this? Because it showed me a lot about the way that people just kind of look at things in general. People would walk up to the glass, talk about me like I wasn't there, like I was an object, for their viewing, and kind of, And the things that they would say about me really just kind of told me things about themselves, you know? So, but in as much as it annoyed me, I always take things like that as like kind of an opportunity to deepen my understanding of like the relationship between these two parties. You know, because there's always going to be a disconnect between the viewer and the thing that they're looking at. But what I'm also really fascinated is with that gap, that deficit, you know, like what exists, that space in between those two things is a material. Um, I was gonna show it, but I didn't get around to it. But the video, it was part of my show at FIK. It was the film that I had put up for public viewing. But it was like this very densely like uh like coded video that's like if you're not an African American between a certain age, you're not gonna get it, but that's the point. Kind of turning that cultural opacity into a material, you know, that opaqueness as a material. And actually, it's interesting. I had like a kind of an inverse experience because I was in Berlin, because I'm living in Berlin for the summer. I went to Spoedmagas and saw an exhibition by Cyprian Georg. Um, it was this like 30-minute long film, and like the best way to sum it up is that it was very German. It was very German. It was very I was told in advance it's like full of a lot of like kind of subtle references that if you aren't from this country, like that you might not understand. But like there were still so many things that I could feel coming through it, where like I didn't even necessarily need to like particularly understand what I was looking at, but it's still I could still feel that it was about something, that there was really something there, even if I couldn't understand it. And I think that's the mark of like a good artwork. Like even that's it's able to still kind of execute a feeling and inspire a feeling, even when the words get lost in translation. You know, because you know, as much as I say literal words, and like, you know, like the main thing that I'm trying to do is just get people to feel something. And, you know, I did a performance. I did like a spoken performance in Milan in the cube that I showed earlier. And like in terms of like the acoustics of the space, the distortion of the audio system, and just the fact that like Italians on average don't speak the best English. There was like I was like, I went into it knowing it's like they're not going to understand a lot of what I was saying. But even then, afterwards, people came up to me and told me like, even despite that, how much they felt what I was, you know, and that's what really matters to me. You know, the words, you know, I think sometimes are second, like, you know, but like that, you know, that feeling, like the secret third thing, you know, I think is was most important, and it's worth being annoyed with sometimes people like, you know, because that's the thing, people are going to say what they have to say, people going to act the way they act, but you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, like I just want to express myself.
If there's music that you're surrounding yourself with, I just was wondering if you're doing music yourself or if you have plans to do music yourself.
So yes, I do actually. Because I do produce, I do record, but it's something outside of like the live performances that I do, because I do consider them to be music, because I perform over like a produced soundscape. Um, but I don't really release any of them, you know, because it's something that I've mostly kept to myself, you know, like it's like if you were there, you were there. And if we're cool, I'll send you the private link to listen to it. But it's something I've mainly kept to myself. But I have played with the idea of like making that a public part of my like kind of presence as an artist, like properly releasing music. You know, because like, you know, I want people to hear it now. you know, and it's finally in a place where I kind of feel comfortable sharing it, even if I don't enjoy the sound of my own voice. But, but yeah, definitely stay tuned. There will be music eventually.
I have a question about your exhibition at the FAK. I've seen it 2 days ago.
I saw you on the camera. Yeah, you look familiar. I almost did. I say it's on my phone. This is a safe space.
I was wondering, well, what was your thought behind the stack paper and scale? Because I feel like it pulls out the aesthetic for other works.
Mhm.
So, yeah, how you place it in the exhibition.
With that work in particular, is a bit more of like a meta artwork. It's like kind of playing off of like the material that I use to make the show. This is like because the idea with that piece is like, because again, kind of goes back to Momo's question about like kind of what I show based on the circumstances. Because like, you know, I really love just like object work like that, but you know, in doing a show in like kind of a non-for-profit space, I'm able to kind of experiment much more. You know, I can put a stack of paper on a scale and put it in the corner. You know, so those are some of the ideas that I want to get more into. And that now I feel like I kind of have the space to explore a bit more. But also funny enough, this was like an accident, but that's the thing. It's like the you never know how the work's gonna look until it's in the space. So this is kind of an accidental part of it, and this is the reason why I positioned it in the way that I did. Is that I didn't know this when I asked them for this specific paper. But the pattern on the side of the packaging is like it looks like an African color pattern, like an African kind of quilt. And I thought that kind of like went kind of nicely with kind of the Afrocentric kind of nature of like what I do. So I was like, I made sure to turn that side outward. And when you first come in, you see it. You know, but that was just kind of like an unintentional byproduct of an accident. But conceptually that, you know, that piece, like, you know, there's one piece of paper, because it's like about like 10 reams of paper in that stack or something. I don't remember exactly, but the quantity of paper in that work is meant to represent days of my life. Every day from the day I was born until the day the show opened. And then the amount of, because I use a lot of paper in my work, and then I deducted from that stack all the number of paper that was used to produce the works in the exhibition, kind of like this metaphorically, like this direct cost against myself of like almost like putting days of my life, pieces of my life, pieces of myself on display for people to consume. But also the idea is that like, you know, even if you were to, I can also tell, I'm gonna tell you the story when I first came out with that piece like 2 years ago. Um, but like the idea is that like if you were to like print out a page for every day of my life from birth to now and read all of it, there'd still be like a gap between your understanding of me and who I actually am, you know? Because I think like true understanding between two people is actually impossible, but the love is in trying, you know? But the story behind that, people back home might not like this, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. The museum I work for produced a reality TV show in collaboration with MTV. Why? I don't know. It was like it's like America's Got Talent except with art. And like they would do these, they get and these are like famous artists that they got on the show. And they would have them do these challenges where they had, like make art about a certain thing under certain conditions. And I was like, oh, this shit is terrible. You know, and like, you know, I was thinking like as a conceptual artist, what would I do? Like, how would I like respond to these prompts in like the most like kind of like asshole-ish way possible, you know, like aggressively conceptual. Like as one of the challenges was like make work about social media. Um, you know, and I was like, well, and then but I think a lot about kind of how like the ephemeral kind of fleeting nature of the internet, and how like we've all had the kind of sensation of like trying to find something on the internet and not being able to, you know, and like you see something and if you don't save it's kind of gone, you might never see it again. You know, the amount of times I've opened Instagram, wanted to save something, refreshed it, and now it's gone. You know, so I was like thinking about that, and like so I have like I have like kind of a hoarder personality, like I hoard information and media. Like, actually, I'll read the exact amount. Let me see. I have in my camera roll 152,000 pieces of media. And that's just what's on my phone. That's not even counting what's on my computer. You know, so like, but then I was thinking, I'm like, what if I like lose access to my iCloud and this is all gone, you know? And like, so what if I printed out, you know, everything on my Instagram, everything in my phone, everything I've saved on Instagram, and like, how much space would that take up? You know, how much paper would that, how much resource? And then I realized it's an impossible act, you know, like from floor to ceiling, how like it would fit from like floor to ceiling if I printed out everything I had. So that's kind of where that, you know, I couldn't do that. So like I had to change that idea, rewrap it a little bit. And that's how that stack of paper in the show kind of came about. So kind of using like this material to quantify time. So that is the long, very long version of the answer to your question.
Well, that's then level it up.
One more.
I was wondering, what you care about the preservation of the only one in this as an appearance within the, or is it what more like political, like the way I think political works is that they have function now. That's the most important, and then they can move on or maybe they won't, but it doesn't matter because they both go. Some sort of purpose. So I wonder how you see your own work.
That's are you done? Oh, okay. That's exactly pretty much it. Like it fulfilled the function in the moment. It was photographed. It was documented. You can round all the shit up in a bonfire for all I care afterwards. You know, if no one wants to buy it, fuck it, fine. You know, it's like, you know, like I work for a museum back home. I'll be transparent. I work security at a museum, you know, like I have shows all over Europe, but I'm a regular person at home, you know. But then, you know, but I have like kind of passing interactions with like the conservation department and, you know, kind of hearing about the meticulous work they'll do to like restore things that were never really meant to be preserved in the first place, you know, things that were made from an ephemeral, fleeting, passing place, you know? So like I say like when I'm like 80, like I don't, it's like don't preserve any of my, I don't care, you know. It's if it's in books, I think that's the, you know, if it's like as long as the idea, and that's the thing with like conceptualism, as long as the idea survives, that's more important than if the object that was meant to represent it survives. Because you know, but the way I work is like a direct response to like the circumstances that I had to make work under, you know, not having a lot of money, not having a lot of space. So I had to make things that one could like collapse down and be made very affordably, and that if I had to discard them or if they became damaged, it was no real loss, you know. And or if I had to store them, it wouldn't take up so much space because I don't have a studio. I make everything in my room, or I make it on site, you know. And so but I will say, those big pieces on the wall at FIK, I do want those back. You know, those are. Oh, so man, what was
Before, I'm sure we would do that way anyway, but I don't really